Oh, okay.
Okay, we're bringing the meeting back to order from executive session. The time is now 6:49. Are there any communications?
Yeah, just a couple communications this evening. I'd like to share. Just a couple communications I would like to share with the board this evening in a partnership with Second Harvest Food Bank, that there will be a substantial food giveaway this Thursday. It's going to be announced, I believe, tomorrow, Thursday, at Warren G. Harding High School around 11 o'clock a.m. There will be additional dates where this will be happening throughout the summer. If it's successful, Mr. Lacey and I met with Second Harvest on Friday, and we're anticipating 700-800 vehicles. This is going to be supported by the National Guard. So when this information is rolled out to our families and or the community, there will be very specific directions that on Thursday, Warren G. Harding High School will be closed. The parking lot at Elm Road will be closed. The parking lot entrances from Atlantic Street will be closed. And the only entrance that will be open is Laird Avenue. That's for the most level of control, where we'll be directing traffic prior to 11 o'clock and funneling individuals through. The Second Harvest Food Bank and the Army National Guard, or the Ohio National Guard, will have the food has to go directly in individuals' trunks, and they shall have their windows up as well. No one gets out of their vehicles. So it'll be a very safe giveaway like the ones you've been seeing throughout other communities, but we have finalized that as of on Friday. So a robocall or more information should be going out here in the next 24 hours. Special congratulations to Dante Capers and the team at the high school for a graduation well done.
Yeah.
Very good.
Heard a lot of positive remarks about that.
And Frank,
World
you
class,
as well.
as we hear.
Great job.
Yes.
World class.
Great.
And special thanks to Frank and Fred TV for their skill.
Yeah.
As I said, decade or two now of their skill set went into making that event what it was for students. So job well done last week. And my last communication, even though I have many more, I'll leave it at this. I think Mr. Nicholson will speak a little bit about this, but the governor had talked about working with Ohio High School Athletic Association, and that facilities would be permitted to be open for fall sports teams, for skill training and conditioning. Warren City Schools properties, as many other in the area, remain closed. Our schools are closed inside and out. There has to be plans of approval in place to meet the guidelines that have come out with this, and we do not have those in place from our coaches at this time. And just so the board is aware, every coach is required to submit a plan, and that plan is being triple reviewed from Mr. Nicholson, Mr. Lacey, and myself for compliance with the expectations. Again, just one of those expectations. Mr. Nicholson might get into this, but still gatherings of 10 or less. So,
Right.
so you cannot have 20 players working on said field. And so we're also going to do this in phases, and maybe Mr. Nicholson will talk about that a little more, but we are responsive on it, have been in communication with our coaches within the hour of that announcement being dropped last week. But that is where we're at, and we're hoping that our student athletes will be practicing conditioning and skill training as early as next week. So with that being said, that concludes the communications for this evening.
Thank you. May I please have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved, Faulkner.
Second.
Okay, call the roll.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Falley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson.
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, the motion carries. Item number 6, the treasurer's report.
Okay, I'm gonna give you our 5-year forecast as it's presented in your agenda today. Typically, I would do a PowerPoint presentation, but I've provided you all with a copy of it, and it's available if anybody needs it by request to the treasurer's office. So to begin with, I want to summarize that our 5-year forecast for fiscal year 20 has us with an ending cash balance estimated at $40,737,526. We had revenues in excess of expenditures by $3 million. So in 2024, we have ourselves with a ending fund balance of $30,610,777. which does not include the emergency renewal levy that would renew in 2023 because you're not allowed to forecast for that. So that is excluded from the balance, and that's 1.8 million approximately. So in looking at our operating revenues, 69% of our revenues come from unrestricted grants and aid, which is made up by our state funding formula, special ed transportation, preschool funding, and casino revenue that we receive. 15% of our total revenue in 2020 is made up of Class 1 and Class 2 real estate. Then we have 7% is made up of restricted grants and aid, which is also our state funding for economically disadvantaged children, and career and technical funding. Then we have all other revenue, about 4%, which encompasses interest, refunds we get from workers' compensation, open enrollment in, excess costs, and court foster placed in tuition. Then we have property tax allocation, which is your homestead and rollback and your tangible personal property tax reimbursements. That makes up 3%. In fiscal year 20, we had $467,000 in tangible property tax reimbursement. In 21, we're going down to $280,000, and then in 22, that will be phased out. That's been the reimbursement we've received since they did away with tangible personal property years ago, and so we're estimated to be phased out in 22. And then the remaining 2% of our revenue is public utility personal property. On the next page, you'll see that our real estate tax revenue from 12 years ago, we were at residential 62% of the total property tax revenue. And then at that time, we had the tangible personal property tax, which made up 14%. In current year, we're looking at still 63% residential. We no longer have the tangible personal property, but we're seeing that the public utility is bringing in a big chunk of 10%. And our commercial industrial tax, Class 2, is remaining around 27%. Moving forward 12 years from now, you'll see that our public utility personal property tax is growing. And that's moving to 18%, and our residential is moving down to 55%. One of the factors there is the public utility is at the full millage, collected at full millage. And
I didn't hear that last part. The public
it's-
utility is what?
it's collected at full millage.
Oh, okay, full millage.
Full voted millage, yes, whereas residential is at the effective, takes into consideration the inflation rate, so
Right.
it goes back to the year it was voted in,
Perfect.
okay? So then the majority of our revenue, as pointed out before, is from unrestricted grants and aid, which is the state funding. So I supplied you with an enrollment history, and I just want to point out some of 2020's numbers to you. Our formula ADM, which excludes the 80% or the 20% career and technical students, that's at the 5,744.53. If you were to look at our resident total ADM, it's 5,826.40. That's what includes our career and technical students. Number 3 is resident ADM, district educated. This is excluding, it's the resident ADM excluding open enrollment out, community school deduction, scholarship deduction, and career and technical students. Then what we have is our total district educated ADM. that number is the resident ADM plus our open enrollment in students.
Okay.
Okay, so if you were looking down below, our open enrollment in for 20 is at approximately 120 students. Open enrollment out is 413.77. So there's a slight increase from 2019, which was 402.71. Open enrollment in remained constant. Community school ADM for 2020 is 644.28. Slight increase from fiscal 19 of 643.57. Our scholarship ADM, which includes Ed Choice, John Peterson and Autism Scholarship, is 401.12 compared to 339.56, which is an 18% increase from last year due to the Ed Choice expansion. The other important factor to point out is our economically disadvantaged percentage. We continue, at 19 it was 89.98. It went to 88.71%. However, remember that fiscal 20 and 21 funding from the state is frozen at fiscal year 19 levels.
Okay.
So we continue to get 90% of the state share index.
Okay.
Which, what that means is you take the 6,020 and multiply that by 90%, and that's what our funding is per student. Special education ADM, I wanted to point out here, in fiscal 19, it was 129.96. In 20, it's 134.42. Not much of an increase, but there's no additional categorical funding in 20 or 21 because it's frozen at 19 levels.
Oh, okay.
So we may have more special ed needs, but we're not getting additional funding for
So
it.
we could have more needs and not get any additional money because it's frozen at the 20, is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's frozen at fiscal year
And we
19
really don't
data.
know that at this point though, right?
Well, this is as of May number 2. So data, so yeah, we did have an additional increase in special ed needs, but no additional funding.
Oh, okay. And we had talked about this in a way, we forecasted that this might happen.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and then discussing May versus October 2019 forecast. Looking at the fund balance, we increased $1,998,319. We got some additional revenue in from workers' comp rebates and whatnot due to COVID. We also, considering this is fund balance, our expenditures decreased for reasons of COVID, plus moving some dollars to our wellness fund, which I'll go over in a little bit. But in 2024, you can see we're projecting in May 2024 $30,610,777 fund balance, which is $4.8 million higher than we projected in October, and that is mainly due to expenditure controls because our revenues are not increasing,
Right.
which is the next slide will show that our revenues exceeding expenditures, which is a measure of whether or not we're deficit spending. Okay, in fiscal year 20, you can see that our revenues exceeded our expenditures by $3 million, so we were not deficit spending. In fiscal year 21, we show an estimate of deficit spending of $3.5 million, and the main reason for that is we're assuming a 10% cut in state funding, and that's my best conservative approach to that. So in fiscal year 22, that deficit spending decreases, and that is mainly because I'm estimating that In '22, we're going to be starting a new biennium budget and looking to going back to the levels of post-COVID funding that we got in fiscal '20. Typically, the state, when they start a new biennium budget, tends to guarantee you at what the previous level funding was until they, know what they want to do with state funding in the formula. And then fiscal '23 and '24, they always look a little bleak in terms of deficit spending, just because it's hard to really go beyond 3 years. And with all the uncertainties surrounding state budgets, and also in fiscal year '24, that renewal levy is excluded in the amount of 1.8 million, so that affects that number. However, fortunately, based upon our history and the passage of levies, I, strongly feel that we'll be able to renew that emergency levy.
That's in 23, right?
23,
Yes.
we can put that on there.
Okay.
So then the next line is your total revenues, and as I mentioned before, you can see that revenues are kind of pretty much flatlined, if not decreasing. We take a conservative approach, and the main thing to get away from this is in fiscal year '21, we decreased our state funding by 10%, which is 5.8 million. The final comparison then is your total expenditures, and our expenditures are increasing. Obviously, we have built-in negotiated salaries and increases through our union contracts, and those are considered in here, which then in turn will increase your retirement and your Medicare expenses. But the one item that we are able to help to keep that benefits number not increasing too much is we have really good claims history on our health insurance. And with that, also this latter part of this fiscal year, with COVID, the claims are decreasing so much because people are not able to go to the hospital, the doctor to get procedures done. So we're going to even see better claim history due to that. So with that said, just wanted to talk a little bit about how I determine the estimates moving forward. I mentioned before the state funding changes. It's based upon fiscal year 19 data in 20 and 21. This could be a benefit to us if we are in declining enrollment, because we're frozen at fiscal 19. So if we lose students, that benefits us, that we don't have a reduction there. The COVID-19 budget cuts that we received in the last 2 months of fiscal 20 totaled $508,696. So our total fiscal 20 formula funding is $55,781,108. We also receive additional dollars for preschool and special education transportation, which total $997,654. So in fiscal year 20, like I said, we're doing a 10% reduction in state funding. That is through numerous webinars I've sat through that we've increasing due to negotiated agreements we have in place. They will increase on your base salary plus